So good day, everyone. We are your reporters for Chapter 11. I'm Christine Bourbon together with Marife Pañalosa to report the topic about the strategy and national development. So today, we will explore strategic national development, the strategy framework for national growth, and competitive advantage of nations. So starting off with the strategic national development. So think of a nation as a really large and complex team. So just like the sports team nga kailangan sang game plan or a business that needs a strategy to succeed, a nation also needs a well thought out approach in order to improve and grow. So this is what strategic national development is all about. So there is a strategic national development is of course we consider here yung nations. So when we say nations, it is more than just a piece of land. So it's made up of people nga who might share common values, traditions, language, and culture, or have a diverse beliefs and backgrounds, all living within the same geographical boundaries. So these people constantly interacting through trade, farming, and education. So these everyday activities are the building blocks of nation's economy and society. Now back to the scenario. So imagine this large and diverse team trying to function without any direction. So of course, it would likely lead to chaos and inefficiency. And this is where yung good governance provided by the government comes into play. So ang government, sila ang gaset sang rules and ga-implement sang kaga-implement sang mga policies that guides the various activities happening within the nation. So ini siya nga mga rules and policies, they are not random, no, or unexpectedly nga ginhimo or gina-implement. So ginahimo ka gina-implement. So the main purpose of this is to achieve yung national development. So what does exactly ba national development means? So when we say national development, it's not an accidental process. So it's not just about the country getting bigger economically. So it encompasses a broader sense of growth and progress, and this includes things like having a stronger economy, better infrastructures like roads, bridges, buildings, communication networks, and improve education and healthcare systems, a more just and stable nga a more just and equitable nga society, and a higher overall quality of life for its citizens. So it's about making things better for everyone who calls nation home. So it is dependent, no, on the convergence or combination of the two important basic components, such as yung structure and the strategy. So we have here the illustration where we can see the structure consisting of three types, such as yung political, economic, and institutional. And in strategy naman, we have here the macro policies, the micro policies, and resources, all of which work together to achieve national development. So first, let us define what structure is. So ang structure, it serves as a foundational operational framework for any nation striving for development. So without a well-defined na structure, the very act of planning, yung resource allocation, and ang pag-establish sang national direction becomes a significant challenge. So think of it like you're trying to build a house without a solid foundations. So kung wala foundation, of course, yung subsequent efforts are likely to be unstable and ultimately unsuccessful. So having a robust structure provides a necessary scaffolding or support for the development of effective strategies which can propel the nation towards the economic growth and overall prosperity. So there are three main types sang national structure. First is the political structure. So ini ang political system sang isa ka country. So this defines kung sino ang ga-hold sang power and how decisions are made in the country. So, ang country bala is democratic, which characterized by a system where power ultimately resides with people or which is often exercised ni siya through regular elections and representative bodies? Or is it autocratic, where ang power is concentrated in the hands of a single individual, like through dictatorship or an absolute monarch, or a small elite group, which often without the input or considering yung concerns ng general population? Or is it a communist or socialist nga country where ang state and the community collectively controls the resources and the means of production, aiming to reduce yung social and economic inequalities? So although both of the structure, which is yung communism and socialism, are related, okay, they still have theoretical differences. So in terms kasi sa communism, it is more stricter or it is more extreme because dere ang state is ang gaholds ng power, specifically yung Communist Party, and it generally abolish or disallow any private ownership. So, or yung mga properties or things that generates profit from others' labor, as it consider the ideology that all property is publicly owned. Pero sa socialism kasi, yes, the government is the one who controls and regulates the major industries, pero gaalaw siya kahit papaano sa private ownership. Amo lang, it is only limited sa mga small businesses, like for example, yung mga small shops, the cafes, mga service providers, like yung mga yung mga barbers or tailors. Pero yung mga large scale nga mga economic resources, like yung mga energy, the education, healthcare, yung banking, transportation, are publicly owned, and it cannot be left sa private it cannot be left for private profit. So another political structure that we can also consider is yung theocracy. So when we say theocracy, it is the government where it is being run by the religious leaders or based on the religious laws. Like for example, yung sa Vatican City or sa Iran. Pero there are countries lang no that do not strictly adopt any one of this political structure, but a combination of this type. For example, sa Turkey, so it has a democratic institution. May ara sila election, may ara man sila parliament and constitution, pero ang ilang presidente is has a consolidated power and limits the press freedom and undermine the judicial independence, or may ara siya hawid or influence sa judiciary branch. So it reflects the presence of democratic structure alongside with autocratic tendencies. Also in China, they claim to have a communist or socialist nga political structure, but in its actual economic practices, it has shown that to have an increasingly engage in capitalist activities, where in capitalism kasi, private individuals and corporations heavily own businesses and property. So although China still remains to have its communist party as the sole political authority, pero yung ideology kasi ng communism or socialism is not fully realized. So it is important for us to understand the country's political structure because it influences all the direction of policies, yung stability, and the overall development for the overall environment for development. Next is yung economic structure. So it refers to how business is conducted in the country, focusing on how a country generates, distributes, and utilizes its wealth. So it encompasses vital activities like consumption, how much people spend, investment, kung pila ang gabalik sa economy, the trade, which is the exchange of goods and services with the other country, and the role of the government in the economy. So, for example, ang sa US and Europe, so ang consumer spending on goods and services is ang ilang significant driver sa ilang economy. So, more than 50% sa ilang GDP is coming from consumption compared sa Japan, which leans heavily on international trade. Halos ang consist sang ilang GDP is coming from that international trade. So a nation's economic structures shapes its growth potential, the employment patterns, and the living standards of its citizens. And lastly is the institutional structure. So this refers to the network of organizations, rules, and norms that governs a country's operation. So this includes the country's financial systems like yung banks and markets, its justice system, like the courts and law enforcement, its military, which aims for security and stability, and its core governance institutions, which includes the civil service and regulatory bodies. So having a strong and reliable nga institutions are crucial because it creates a stable and predictable nga environment where businesses can thrive, citizens feel secure, and resources are managed effectively, ultimately laying a solid foundation for sustainable national development. So in essence, these three structures are interconnected and interdependent. So ang weakness or ang failure ng isa ka structure can have a negative effect on others. So for example, there is a political instability, or there is a problem in the political structure. So it can undermine the investor confidence and disrupt the economic activity. Similarly, having a weak justice system, which is a flaw in the institutional structure, can lead to corruption, which it can distort the economic decision making and can damage the public trust in the political system. So opposite naman of having a positive development sa isa ka structure, which it can reinforce the other. So for example, the establishment of a strong independent regulatory bodies can foster more stable and efficient the economic environment, which in turn can contribute to the greater political stability by improving livelihoods and reducing social unrest. So therefore, for a nation to achieve sustainable development and prosperity is dapat in harmony ang ilang tatlo ka structure, because the health and effectiveness of one can directly impact the others. So beyond just having a structure, nations requires a well-defined strategy to actively pursue and achieve meaningful nga progress. So kung ang structure is kung ang structure is ang foundation, ang strategy is like the nation's roadmap. So it outlines the desired destination or goals and the principal routes or pathways to get there. So however, this roadmap is only effective when it is closely aligned with the underlying structure of the nation. So kung ang strategy kag ang structure are in harmony, okay, a country's maximize its potential for development. So without a clear strategy, a nation may lack of direction and focus, leading to inefficiencies and stagnation. Now, if without naman sang strong nga national structure, even the best strategies may fail due to poor execution, lack of coordination, and ineffective institutions. So in addition, the nation's development strategy is a comprehensive plan which includes its policies, ang strategic deployment of its available resources, and the deliberate actions undertaken by the government. So ang government they play a crucial role by first setting clear and achievable goals for the nation. So mapa economic growth mana, social development, environmental sustainability, or national security. And in order to translate these overarching goals into tangible outcomes, the government must develop and rigorously enforce policies. So ini siya nga mga policies is ga-serve siya as a specific rules of engagement for citizens, businesses, and other actors within the nation. So these policies are crucial in order nga to maintain the order, ensuring accountability, and facilitating the effective implementation of the overall strategy. So without a clear and consistently applied nga policies, even yung mga most nga well-intentioned strategies again can falter due to lack of direction and coordination. So the policies are both macro and micro in perspectives. Okay, so before we proceed, I would like to ask a question, no? First, to assess if you're listening, and of course, to hear your perspectives or thoughts about the topic. So the question is, the national is the national development hinges on both structure and strategy, right? So, in your opinion, which of these foundational components plays a more pivotal role in a nation's progress and why? So, let's have two people no, to answer this question. So, first is we will have Nonato, and another is Des Deslate. Okay, so type your or post your answers lang in the comment section, and we will see kung we want to know what your thoughts or insights about this question. So thank you. Next, moving on. So again, di ba, ang policies, it has a macro and micro policy. So first, let's define or let's discuss what macro policy is. So when we say macro policies, these are a broad reaching tools that the government gina-utilize ang government to steer the overall direction and performance of the national economy, and gina-address niya ang mga issues that affect the country as a whole. So ini siya nga mga policies is ga-operate ni siya at a high level, influencing the fundamental economic variables and shaping the environment in which individuals, businesses operates. So the four key macro policies highlighted are the fiscal policies, the monetary policies, the exchange rate policies, and the income policy. So first is the fiscal policy. So it is the strategic use of the government spending, like yung mga expenditures on the public services or infrastructures, and taxation, which is yung revenue collected from the individuals and businesses to influence the economic activity. So when the government spends more, it injects money into the economy. So this can create jobs, boost demand for it boosts demand for goods and services, and it stimulates the economic growth. So when the government taxes more, it takes money out of the hands of individuals and businesses. So lowering taxes or reducing taxes can leave people with more money to spend or businesses with more profits to invest. So which potentially boosts economic activity. So raising taxes naman can help cool down an overheating economy or fund increased government spending. So the fiscal policy of a government can be any of the following. So it is either balance, in surplus, or deficit, which directly impact siya to its capacity to invest in crucial areas like education, healthcare, and infrastructure, which are vital for long-term national development. So, having a prudent fiscal management ensures that sustainability of public finances and government abil- uh, public finances and government's ability to fund yung mga essential services. However, mismanagement or spending on unproductive ng mga projects, it can lead to deficits and economic problems. And aiming naman for surplus allows the government to invest more effective in initiatives that can contribute to the economy. Next is ang monetary policy. So, ini siya nga policy is primarily the responsibility sang central bank. So, it involves managing the money supply or yung total amount sang money nga ga-circulate sa economy and the interest rate, which is the cost of borrowing money. Buying and selling treasury bills is one way the central bank influence the money supply. So when the government sells treasury bills to the public, okay, it takes money out of the circulation. And when it buys them back, it injects money into the economy. So the central bank also want to keep the inflation at manageable level. So because having a high inflation erodes or damage the purchasing power of money, meaning your savings buy less. So by controlling the money supply and interest rate, the central bank tries to prevent runaway or uncontrollable high nga inflation, which encouraging people to invest rather than to save in banks, which can stimulate economic activity. Also, maintaining an adequate nga foreign exchange reserves are crucial for imports, pagbayad sa mga international loans, and funding overseas projects. So monetary policy is crucial for maintaining price stability and supporting sustainable economic growth. So by carefully managing the interest rates and money supply, the central bank aims to create an environment where businesses can invest, people can find jobs, and prices remain relatively stable. Next is ang exchange rate policy. So this policy involves the strategy a country employs to manage or influence the value of its currency relative to the other currencies in the international market. So having a stable and predictable nga exchange rate is crucial for facilitating international trade and investment. If volatile or grabe ang hulag sang exchange rates, it can create uncertainty for businesses involved in importing and exporting, which it potentially lead to economic shock. So some countries may choose to peg or fix their currency to another stable currency, while other is gaalaw sila ya to float freely or manage it within a certain range. Meaning if there is because meaning kasi dito, if there is a high demand sa currency, its value will likely to go up or appreciate. Kung low naman, of course, ang demand, the value might go down or depreciate. So, the chosen exchange rate policy can impact the nation's competitiveness in the global markets. The cost of imports, the flow of foreign investments, all of which have an implications for national development. Last is yung income policy. So this policy involves the direct government involvement, intervention to control the or influence the wages and prices in the economy. So when the prices goes up, the workers often demand higher wages to maintain their living standards. However, when ang wage naman ang gataas, businesses may raise the prices to cover yung higher labor costs, leading to a cycle of um, increasing prices and wages. To manage this, the governments sometimes implement price controls, setting maximum prices for essential goods like yung mga oil or rice to make them affordable for the population. So even in the actual market, mas taas yung presyo. So in this case, the government might subsidize the difference to keep the price down for consumers. So the government can also influence wages through minimum wage laws or by encouraging certain wage levels in negotiations. So yung primary goal sa income policy is often to combat inflation, particularly yung wage price spirals. In such scenario, sa pagtaas ng presyo, which it leads to for workers to demand a higher price, which in turn can increase yung production cost, and which it leads to further price increases, creating a vicious cycle. So income policies aim to break this cycle. So by attempting to regulate the wage and price increase, the income policy seeks to create a more stable economic environment for both the businesses and consumers. So this stability can encourage investments, support real wage growth, and protect the purchasing power of its citizens. So we have here the illustration where we can see the Philippines macro policies and the strategies that can be applied based on its current situation. So first here in the fiscal policy, we have here the balanced budget, meaning ang government spending, ang government revenues is or ang gasulod na kwarta sa government is equal siya sa government expenditures. Kung ang surplus naman mas taas yung government revenue kaysa government expenditures. Kung sa deficit, of course, opposite lang siya sa surplus. So the table indicates that if the government finances are in balance, it generally indicates that there is a sound fiscal management. So the table doesn't suggest specific strategies for this scenario, implying nga kung ano man ang current practices nga gina-implement is i-continue lang. If there is a budget surplus naman, this provides the government with flexibility. So it could choose to reduce the taxes, increase spending on priority areas, bayaran yung mga existing debts, save for the future needs or potential economic downturns. And as you can see, the table doesn't list specific strategies. But surplus generally offers opportunities for strategic investment or fiscal relief since it has enough budget for this for the initiatives. So if there is a budget deficit naman, which is mas taas pa ang nagastos ng government kaysa gasulod nga kwarta sa ila, this can lead to increase national debt and may require the government to implement strategies to manage the shortfall. So these strategies aim to either increase the government revenue, decrease the government spending, or improve the efficiency of resource allocation. So the table shown the list of potential strategies to deal with budget deficits. So first is yung conservation of energy. So this involves the government implementing measures to reduce its own consumption of energies, like for example yung electricity, fuel, across all its agencies and operations. So with this, the government directly lower lowers its utility bills and operational costs, thus reducing the overall expenditures. Next is proposed freezing of the internal revenue allotments, or IRA. So the IRA is initial portion of the national taxes collected by the national government that is distributed to the LGUs. So freezing the IRA would mean temporarily stopping or suspending the increase in this allotment. So this would reduce the amount of the money the national government transferred to local governments in in short term. So thereby decreasing its immediate cash outflow. So this is a sensitive measure since it can impact the ability some LGUs to fund their own projects and services. So it's often considered as a temporary or last resort strategy. Next is proposed reduction in the development funds of Congress. So the member of the Philippine Congress, both the House of Representatives and the Senate often have a discretionary funds allocated for local development projects in their constituencies. So reducing these funds would decrease the overall government spending on such initiatives. Ang consideration lang dire is that this can be politically challenging move as it might affect the ability of lawmakers to deliver projects to their constituents. Next is reallocation of funds into areas of vital investments. So instead of simply cutting spending across the board, this strategy involves shifting existing government funds from less critical or less productive areas to sector considered considered essential for long-term economic growth and social well-being. So this aims to ensure nga ang limited nga government resources is ginagamit siya into something that can give them a biggest positive impact. So, potentially leading to a higher economic returns in the future and addressing the critical needs. So, ang examples ng mga vital investments is of course yung mga infrastructures, education, health, agriculture, and technology. Next is the collection of 12% expanded value-added tax. So, ang value-added tax, ini siyang consumption tax nga gina-impose on most goods and services. Ang expanded nga VAT naman, it means to apply to a broader range